Good morning, beautiful people. It is time for us to officially get started on this fabulous Sunday morning. I am Vicki Jeter, your practitioner, spiritual director for Louisville Center for Spiritual Living Teaching Chapter. Oh my goodness. Can you believe that this is the last Sunday in April? Oh my God. I can't believe it. Next Saturday is a Kentucky Derby. We were just talking about the Derby, and I almost didn't want to start on time because people were having a lot of fun talking about the celebrations that happen this type of year. And that's just wonderful, wonderful energy. And what I think about for Derby, I love the part about being able to check out who's going to run in the race. You know, they put out all those lovely stories. I love the stories of the horses, and it snuck up on me so fast. I don't even know this year who's running, so I have to kind of catch up on that. But one thing, just even before we officially start and welcome our fabulous guest speaker, I wanted to point out to you all that if you notice on the wall behind us now, that frame is actually our charter certificate. So we are becoming more and more official with how we present on Sundays, and we were delighted to find a place for that certificate to go. Vernon's getting a good laugh out of this now. Oh, okay. So let us take a breath and more fully arrive. And I will drop back and say, absolutely. It is our great fortune today to have Scott Marcus back with us as our guest speaker. It's going to be wonderful to catch up with him. He spoke for us 3 times in 2022, and as things have unfolded, this is the first time it worked for him to come back. And so before we start with him, this is actually the time in our service for setting intention. So take a few moments and set your intention for being here today. And together, we get to express our intention to follow Scott in his creative take on vulnerability, power, and purpose as a brilliant vessel of spirit. With that in mind, we begin with opening prayer. Taking an even deeper breath, settling more deeply, more broadly into recognizing the presence of the one life that is that divine creative source of all that is, the one love and law, one and only one, omnipresent right here, right now, omniscient in, through, and as each of us, and especially lighting Scott's intuition and inspiration this morning. And from that knowing that the omniscience and the omnipotence, the omnipotent power of spirit is right here where we are, we relax into knowing that the gifts given and received have been in the law in advance, and this is but the fulfillment of love. So we are so grateful to have this time together in community that extends across this nation. Thank you, thank you, thank you, God. I just release it. I let it be. And so it is. And so absolutely, we welcome each and every one of you with our whole hearts to Louisville Center for Spiritual Living Teaching Chapter. Whether you're here with us this morning for the first time or watching us on Zoom, thank you for your presence. We would not be who we are without you. We start each day greeting God and the angels, LCSL as an entity, and each and every one of you in our hearts. Vernon and I set up and light the God candle, and inviting everyone who is seeking to find us. And so know that you are welcome no matter what faith or path you come from, no matter what you were taught to believe, you are welcome here. And this moves us to our mission and vision. I invite you to say with me that we are doing our opening song before we do mission and vision. Thank you, Vernon. This is Miss Denise Rosier.
Hey everybody, it's Denise Rosier. Welcome to this time of singing together and reconnection here at Vista. The words are going to be right there at the bottom of your screen, and so I invite you to sing along with me. Spirit is definitely in this place, right here, wherever we are. Spirit is always among us because we bring it. So we're going to raise the roof with shouts of praise. Are you ready? We have come together as a family. We have come here as we are. Yes, we have. We have come with arms wide open. We have gathered here in love. Spirit is in this, Spirit is in this place. Spirit is in this, Spirit is in this place. Spirit is in this, Spirit is in this place. Raise the roof with shouts of praise. Spirit's in this place. We sing in celebration. We sing with words of praise. We sing with words of praise. We affirm all life as sacred. We declare that peace is here. Yeah, yeah. Spirit is in this, Spirit is in this place. Ooh. Spirit is in this, Spirit is in this place. Spirit is in this, Spirit is in this place. Raise the roof with shouts of praise. Spirit's in this place. Let's sing it together. Spirit is in this, Spirit is in this place. Ooh. Spirit is in this, Spirit is in this place. Spirit is in this, Spirit is in this place. Raise the roof with shouts of praise. Raise the roof with shouts of praise. Spirit's in this place. Spirit is definitely in this place.
So I want to just openly acknowledge that little bobble, and I want to take it in honor of Scott's being a model for as a practicing imperfectionist. Now we move to our mission and vision, and I invite you to say with me. Our mission is to teach personal transformation as a virtual community, living the principles of science of mind and celebrating all paths to God. And our vision statement, a world that honors and respects all people. As we know, Spiritual living is only as good as we can relate to it and apply it in our lives. So each week we have an application of what we believe. These are thoughts to be put into practice or bring to discussion time and share. And this week's application of what we believe is: we envision all people, all beings, and all life as expressions of God. We see a world in which every person lives in alignment with their highest spiritual principle from whatever path they come from, emphasizing unity with God and connection with each other. A world in which individually and collectively we are called to a higher state of consciousness and action. And this comes from the CSL Global Vision. Now, I turn it over to Miss Katrina.
Thank you. For our morning reading, I have two quotes to share with you. The first is by Steve Maraboli from the book Unapologetically You. When I see someone on the side of the road or parking lot with a dead battery, I would pull up next to them and take out my jumper cables, and by attaching my living battery to their dead one, they were able to start their car. During that process, my functioning battery doesn't have to teach their battery how to be a battery. The process of jump starting doesn't teach the battery to be what it already is. All the living battery does is remind the dead battery of its initial potential. It reminds it of its power. What a wonderful metaphor. So let's take a deep breath and soak that in for a moment. So our follow-up quote from Ernest Holmes from Creative Living. In transforming energy into power, we are uniting an invisible essence with an invisible law, which is the way the universe operates. If we identify ourselves with the source, then our word establishes eternal harmony, transforms everything, rearranges everything to our benefit. It is an act of complete surrender of the human to the divine without the loss of the human, a complete inflowing of the divine into the human. So let's take that in to our meditation. This meditation is based on our practical application of what we believe for today. It comes from the Center for Spiritual Living Global Vision, and let's move into meditation. I would like to invite you to be fully present. Feel free to adjust your body to get comfortable and settled into your seat. When you are comfortable, please close your eyes or lower your gaze. Bring your attention to your feet. Are your feet grounded on the earth? Notice your feet now. Feel free to wiggle your toes and feel yourself even more grounded. Notice your breathing. Breathe in deeply and breathe out deeply. Notice your lungs filling with oxygen. Allow the breath to expand to its fullest and release your breath with ease. Breathe in and breathe out. Bring your attention to your intuition. Are you listening carefully to your internal guidance system as it lovingly guides you? Allow the clarity to fill your mind as you pay close attention to your intuition. Acknowledge your intuition and internal guidance system that leads you to living a life of divine right action. Thank your intuition for supporting every aspect of your life. Now bring your attention to my voice. Listen carefully, noticing your thoughts and feelings when you hear the following words. We envision all people, all beings, and all life as expressions of God. We see a world in which every person lives in alignment with their highest spiritual principle, emphasizing unity with God and connection with each other. A world in which individually and collectively we are called to a higher state of consciousness and action. Breathe into this vision. What does this vision look like for you? What does this vision sound like for you? How does this vision feel? Allowing this vision to become a more clear, more embodied, and more expansive. Listen to the words even more deeply. We envision all people, all beings, and all life as expressions of God. We see a world in which every person lives in alignment with their highest spiritual principle, emphasizing unity with God and connection with each other. A world in which individually and collectively we are called to a higher state of consciousness and action. Breathing deeply, breathe in and out. When you are ready, gently bring your attention back to this room and begin opening your eyes. I am so grateful to see everyone and your beautiful, magnificent faces today. Thank you for letting me do the meditation this morning, and so it is. Amen. Our special music this morning is from a magnificent artist that I absolutely love, Jenna Stanfield, and the song is If I Were Brave.
Could not fail. If I believed, would the wind always fill up my sails? How far would I go? What could I achieve? Trusting the hero in me. If I were brave, I'd walk the razor's edge, where true believers dare to tread and never lose faith, even when losing my way. What step would I take today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? What if we're all meant to do what we secretly dream? What would you ask if you knew you could have anything? the mighty oak sleeps in the heart of a seed. Are there miracles in you and me? You know there are. If I were brave, I'd walk the razor's edge, where true believers dare to tread and never lose faith, even when losing my way. What step would I take today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? If I refuse to listen to the voice of fear, with the voice of courage whisper in my ear, maybe this is what I'd hear. I am brave enough to move ahead, where true believers dare to tread, never lose faith, even when losing my way. What step will I take today? I am brave. What will I do 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 today? I am
You know, that song is such a beautiful match to the song we started the year with that Pat introduced us to, I Want You to Be Brave. And so what a beautiful thing to come into as we come into the middle of the year. I'm so, so grateful for these things that Spirit just dovetails together. And so now, this being the 5th week of April, is our wrap up for our theme of the power of vulnerability. And so I just want to give you all a reminder that the theme for the year is living out loud. And our theme for the month has been the power of vulnerability. And so today's presentation is vulnerability, power, and purpose. And I'm so excited to get this very creative take that I am sure that Scott Marcus is going to bring us. And so now, for those of you who don't have as much of a background on Scott, because it has been a while since he's been with us, I just want to go through an introduction officially as we gratefully welcome him back. He is, as some of you probably heard him mention, from Eureka, California Center for Spiritual Living. He is a practitioner. And the thing is that his journey, in essence, to where he is now began in 1993 on his 39th birthday. This is when he went through his dark night of the soul. He was suffering chest pains, backaches, financial ruin, and a failing marriage. And he decided one more time to take control of his life. He lost 70 pounds over 1 year, and which he has maintained, as you can see. And from that beginning, and a background that he already had in media, Scott became an award-winning speaker and professional motivator. And as you might recall, he merged into CSL and actually achieved his practitioner license last year. We were celebrating him as he was, I think, doing his first closing treatment maybe for us. It was awesome, officially as a practitioner. And so the thing is that by nature, Scott inspires and educates audiences across the country on how to change their attitudes to increase productivity and morale, especially during trying times like what we've all been through. His programs on attitude, stress, and communication are couched in hilarious and touching stories of weight loss and all kinds of other trials and tribulations. And his playful, humorous, highly interactive, and inspirational presentations deal with the thoughts and feelings and beliefs that lead to painful, unproductive behaviors that we want to be able to then transform. So whether he's speaking in small audiences like us or for conferences, and pardon me, his emphases are on letting go of procrastination and being willing to practice being an imperfectionist. And that's one of my favorite parts, as you could see this morning. So that being said, I turn this over to you, Scott. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you, Vicki, and thank you for the opportunity to be back yet again. Thank you, Pat. If it wasn't for Pat, I wouldn't have met this lovely group. Boy, I sound impressive. Geez. Anyway, the song "If I Were Brave," you had mentioned you started the year off with "Be Brave," which I believe is a Sarah Bareilles song. And we were talking, the group here, before we started officially talking. We were unofficially talking, now we're officially talking. Sarah Bareilles actually is our hometown hero. So she comes from the city of Eureka. She just did a huge concert here a couple of months ago with 11,000 people. It was a free concert. Her aunt lives across the street from me and is a fan of my column, so or lives right down the block. Anyways, it's just kind of fun, and I loved listening to the Janice Stanfield song, especially the words that were going across the screen, just reading what other people had been through. Two of my very favorite quotations about bravery and courage, which isn't where I was going to go, but since bravery came up, two of my very favorite quotations are both from a very well-known author. His name is anonymous, or her name is anonymous. I don't know where they actually came from. I think one of them actually might be from Emerson. But the first one, which is definitely anonymous, is "Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the overcoming," which I have really loved that definition of courage. And the other one, which I think is Emerson, but I'm not sure, and I'll word it in the way that he said it, because it's gender specific, but you can remove the gender specification. "Brave men are no braver than average men. They just remain brave 5 minutes longer." So it's the whole concept of shifting bravery from this "I have no feelings, I am invulnerable," and as we start to transition into the actual concept here, into "No, I have these feelings, I am afraid, yet I persevere, yet I move forward." And I love the use of the word "yet." Yet is such an empowering word. To be honest, with this topic, I didn't really know where to go. I don't like this topic. It makes me feel too vulnerable. So it really caused me to do some research about what really is vulnerability. I mean, it's kind of you know it when you see it, you know it when you feel it, but how would you describe it? So I'll open it up to get started, and you can unmute if you would like. But if you were to describe vulnerable, what is being vulnerable? There was, speaking of songs from the 90s and Sarah Bareilles, there was an artist, Natalie Imbruglia, I think was her name, who had a song in the late 90s called "Torn," like to rip something. And she had a line in the song which was always really striking to me. I remember taking my kids to school and having that on the radio, and the line in the song was lying cold and naked on the floor, which to me is definitely a vulnerability. But let me ask you, what words come to mind when you hear vulnerable? You can put them in the chat box or you can say them. To clarify, that was a question, and there's usually a response that comes from somebody else.
We're going to do a little spontaneous sharing, like sharing time. So he's inviting you to put your thoughts in the chat or raise your hand and we'll unmute you and you can share. And I will say, I guess, since my mic is open, I would say for me, vulnerability is being thrown in or diving into the unknown and just having to roll with it.
Being brave.
I like what you're saying, though, being brave. I've noticed when I've described, and somebody said, "Oh, you were so brave," and I'm like, "No, I really wasn't so brave. I was literally getting through it. I didn't give up. I mean, I kept going, but so I would say, you're in the middle of the unknown and you just get through it."
Okay. And I see in the chat room there's a lot of words coming up. Totally honest, authentic, open, real, present. Anybody else have anything you'd like to throw into the mix? Joan.
I agree with Vicki, what she said, but I would also add, when you're thrown into something, you learn to trust. You learn to trust whether you really want to or not, but
Yes.
you survive being vulnerable.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I was trying to say. Thank you, Joan.
So when we take a look at it, again, for me, vulnerability, willing, that's a great word. Thank you, Vine George. For me, when I thought of vulnerability, the image that came to mind was that one from that song, just here we go, hurt me, stab me, put pain within me. And nobody wants to feel that way. I mean, obviously we don't. Yet when we look at the words that are now scrolling across the chat room, or the words that Joan and Vicki have said, and the prelude here with the word bravery, vulnerability is a real strong feeling, if I can flip it over. And the thing about words are, when I when I was going through my divorce, the story that Vicki mentioned back when I was 39, there was my therapist used to say to me that I needed to learn to draw a line in the sand about what were my boundaries, what are not my boundaries, what will I accept and what will I not. And he used to joke that I would draw a dotted line in the sand because it's like I'd have my boundary, and then somebody would, and it was my ex to a large extent, would step across the line, and I go, all right, well, I'm just going to back up a little bit here, and now don't you dare cross this line, and then back up a little bit further, and don't you dare cross this line. And I felt bad about that, because I wasn't standing up for my boundaries. But isn't also the willingness to negotiate boundaries a sign of compassion or kindness? I mean, just to set a limit because that's the limit and never break the limit, that doesn't seem right either. So to be vulnerable, some of the words that could also come across are to be sincere, to be embracing, or somebody wrote real and honest, to be empathetic and to be approachable. All of these are words that mean vulnerable. And a lot of times vulnerability and spirituality are two concepts that are kind of considered at odds with each other, because vulnerability is often associated with, and I would go so far as to say wrongly, as I'm learning more about it, wrongly associated with weakness. To be vulnerable is to be weak. It's the, when an animal, we have a dog and two cats, but when an animal rolls over and shows you his or her belly, that's very vulnerable, but it's also very trusting. But it is a very weak place to be, because they are exposing their physically the most dangerous place for them. So vulnerability is often associated with weakness, and spirituality is often associated with strength, because that's where one gets one's faith, one's strength, one's powers from one's inner spirit. So did a little bit of research here about some quotes from two of my favorite Science of Mind folk. One, of course, is Ernest Holmes. And they both, Ernest Holmes, and I'll give you the other one in a second, Ernest Holmes believed that vulnerability was the key to spiritual growth. And I will read this from the Science of Mind textbook. Vulnerability is the willingness to be open and honest with ourselves and others. It is the courage to be seen and known for who we are, flaws and all. Vulnerability is not weakness, it is strength. It is the willingness to be seen and known even when we are afraid of being rejected or hurt. When we are vulnerable, we open ourselves up to the possibility of greater love, compassion, and understanding. We also open ourselves up to the possibility of being hurt, but the potential rewards of vulnerability far outweigh the risks. Let's see where we. When we are vulnerable, we connect with others on a deeper level. We build trust and intimacy. We feel more connected to ourselves and the world around us, and we experience greater joy and happiness. We can't have those unless we're vulnerable. And I will add into it, when I was going through my practitioner training, I'm kind of known within my within my group as the skeptical practitioner. I'm the kind of person, when I'm on the road speaking and I do motivational speaking, one of my big gripes has been motivational speakers will say, go get it, go get that brass ring, or there's that beautiful island, and they never tell you how to do it. They just say it's there, and they rah, 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 and they encourage you, but they don't tell you what. And I've always been the type of person who said, don't just tell me. Maybe I ought to have been from Missouri. Show me how this works, because I got to think this out. I don't just accept things because you tell me. And part of the reason I love this philosophy so much is because it does encourage you to ask questions. If the universe didn't want us to have the ability to ask questions, we wouldn't have that ability. So because we have it, let's honor it. So I'm always the one who asks questions. And I remember when I was in practitioner training, one of the other people who was very associated with the center, she said, oh, you're going to love Thomas Troward, because that's how he does it. He just kind of lines it all out. And if you're not familiar with him, he was in the 19th century. He was a prosecutor in India for on behalf of Britain, of course, because they were the, whatever you call it, the owners of India. So I always liked him because he just takes things and lines them out, says, if this, then that, if this, then that. And his comment about vulnerability in the Edinburgh Lectures on Mental Science was, the first step in the development of spiritual nature is to learn to be vulnerable. This means to be open to new experiences, to new ideas, and to new people. It means to be willing to let go of our old ways of thinking and be open to new possibilities. Vulnerability is the vehicle by which these new ideas flow into us and can then flow back out into the universe. It's in effect a law of circulation. I cannot put new ideas into the universe or I cannot manifest them unless I allow them within me in the first place. And I've spoken here, we were talking beforehand, this is the fourth time, and I hope I'm not sharing stories or repeating stories, but one of my favorites was my mother, who passed away in 2000. And I've shared this before, I think, but this is my Science of Mind textbook that I went through training with, and you can see all the little notes, and I've got, I do Kindle a lot, that way I can remember things, and this unfortunately is not on Kindle. But when I decided to become I've got my image turned off because otherwise I stare at me all the time, so I hope I've got my book and screen. But this book that many of us have read, when I decided to become a practitioner, my mother had passed away, and when we cleaned out her house in 2000, I took this book. I was not interested at that point in Science of Mind, kind of background, but for whatever reason, I took this book. When I started my training, I don't know if you can see that, my mom's name is in the book. This book belongs to Ruth Marcus. And as I started reading the book, I know this is taking up time. What you probably can't see here, you get them. There's lines in there. These were comments that my mother had made in the book. So as I was going through this, I was getting to read, she didn't get very far in the book, but I got to read what my mom had written years before as she was studying this, and she wasn't planning to be a practitioner. So that is a long roundabout. My mom was a devotee, a real fan of Deepak Chopra. And she lived in Los Angeles. And she used to have all of his, back then, cassette tapes. And she used to have all of his books, and she would read them, and she would listen to the tapes. And we, one day, I remember it very clearly, it was January 1st, 1999. My mom calls me, and there was an article in the LA Times on January 1st about what famous people had wished for their kids. And so they interviewed a bunch of actors and celebrities and politicians and said, what do you wish for your kids? So my mom calls me, as my mom was prone to do, and says, don't ever buy me anything again from Deepak Chopra. Now, LA is about 600 miles from here, just so you can get the perspective. And I said, why? And she goes, well, did you see what he said in the LA Times? I said, no, I don't. I'm 600 miles from there. I don't get the LA Times. And she said, well, I'm just very upset with him. I don't want you to buy anything. I go, well, what did he say? And she said, he wished for his kids to live in a state of constant uncertainty. Now, to my mom, that was wishing upon your children like the worst thing ever, because everything is supposed to be lined out. You're supposed to feel safe and secure. And so to wish upon your kids a state of constant uncertainty, how dare you do that? And I said, well, why did he do that? And did you read why he did that? And she said, I don't know. And she goes, I got so angry, I put down the paper. And I said, well, I'm kind of now vested in this, Mom. Would you tell me why he did it? So she said, sure. She hung up, called back a few minutes later and said, okay, I get it. You can buy me Deepak Chopra stuff again. He wished for his kids to live in a state of constant uncertainty, because it is in the state of constant uncertainty where all things are possible. The more we narrow it down, the more we close ourselves in, the less we are open to what could possibly happen. And that's a normal thing for us to do. We put on these blinders because we're afraid, and because if we just continue to follow this little path that we think we can control, and to an extent we do, but a very small extent, we'll get where we want to go. But speaking of other famous quotations, I think it was John Lennon who said, life is what happens while you're making other plans. We need to be open to these ideas, and we can't be so unless we are vulnerable, unless we are, as the words that have been stated in the chat room and some of them that I came up with here, unless we are totally honest, unless we are authentic, unless we are real, unless we are present, which are all words of being vulnerable. None of these are words of weakness. Vulnerable, if we can equate vulnerable with open, it suddenly changes the whole concept. So I don't know about anybody else, me being old and all. I had a doctor's appointment this week, and my annual physical that I have to go through. And I have a new doctor, my other one retired. And so the young woman who was helping me out, the doctor's assistant or whatever, she comes in and she's asking me some questions. They did my weight and the whole thing. And why do they always take your weight in the middle of the room where everybody can watch it? On a scale that's like the size for cattle? I mean, this just seems totally wrong. I'm a professional weight loss guy. I worked for Weight Watchers for 34 years. Don't weigh me in front of a room full of people. It's just not going to work. I've got to take off my shoes, my belt, the whole thing. But so the young woman weighs me in, and then she escorts me into the room, and she says to me, she asks a couple of questions, and she goes, I have to ask some other questions now. And I said, okay, there are certain questions that we ask once you're at a certain age. I said, oh, because I'm old. And she said, oh, well, no, we don't call it that. And I said, I do. Being older is a gift. A lot of people didn't make it. I got to make it this far. I hope to make it a lot further, but the lessons in life that come along with aging, and I'm sure you have your own lessons in life, but if I had to narrow it down to possibly the biggest lesson that I am learning right now, is almost everything boils down to a conflict between fear and faith. Anytime I move forward, it's because I have faith. Now, one might call it a spiritual faith. One might call it a faith in my skills. One might call it education. But all of that is because I, on some level, believe that I will get, or that it will turn out the way I want. And the times when I hold myself back, and maybe you're the same, the times when I hold myself back are when I'm in fear. And I'm not saying fear is a bad thing. Fear is a thing. Without fear, we would be unprotected. Fear's intention is to protect us. That is why it exists. However, that fear that can serve as a fortress for us can also serve as a jail to enclose us. Again, it's that weird flip of words. Is not having strong boundaries really being compassionate? Is compassionate mean have weak boundaries? Is being afraid, is that protecting me, or is it holding me back? So a lot of times, again, I'll speak for me, that's the only person I can really speak for, is when I am unwilling to embrace the vulnerability, the openness, the honesty, the authenticity of who I am, it is because I am afraid. I am afraid I will be hurt. I am afraid, and this for me is a big one, I'm afraid others will judge me. You know, I don't want people to think badly of me. What's the name of that book? What you think of me is none of my business. But yet, yeah, I don't even know what they're thinking. But I will be vulnerable because somebody, one of you who's in some state far away from here, who I might never ever meet, might have a thought about me that I don't care for. But because of that, I don't become me. And because I'm not me, I'm not in touch with that, shall we say, bigger me, that universal divine me, because you might think something about me that I don't like and I don't know and might even not even be going on. There's a whole series of convolutions in that logic, yet so we do it. So let's talk a little about what being vulnerable is. Yes, when we're being vulnerable, we're open to the possibility of being hurt or rejected. We're open to the possibility of being hurt or rejected when we're not vulnerable. You know, when I lived in Redding in the mid-70s, a city in Northern California here, and I was a disc jockey and I was trying to move up the career. And in radio, when you move up your career, you literally move because you go to bigger radio stations. So I had sent, back then they were called tapes, I had sent a tape to a radio station in Portland, Oregon here, which was a big giant radio station. And they had called and they had said, well, we'd like to talk. And I said, wow, I might actually get to go on this great big 50,000 watt clear channel radio station. And I was in my mid-20s and I was, as I'm prone to do through most of my life, I was in a meeting with a therapist and the therapist was saying to me, how do you feel about the possibility of getting this engagement in Portland? And I said, I'm not getting my hopes up. And he said, well, why aren't you getting your hopes up? And I said, because if I get my hopes up and then I don't get the job, I might be disappointed. And if you don't get your hopes up and you don't get the job, how will you feel? I'd be disappointed. And he said, well, if the result's going to be the same, it seems like you might enjoy the ride a little more if you anticipate it and you're excited about it. And besides, maybe you're putting that energy into the universe to say this is what you really want. So I have to open myself up to this. I have to be vulnerable to the ideas that could be flowing into me. A lot of times, again, we don't become vulnerable because other people, we're afraid other people are going to run our lives by us expressing who we are. And boy, I've seen a lot of therapists. Anyway, one of my other therapists had said to me, I love this line, if I let you run my life, you get 2 lives and I don't get any. And that doesn't seem fair. So back to the concept of I have to be my authentic, a word that came up, my authentic self. Vulnerability and authenticity go together. You can't be authentic without being vulnerable. To be authentic, you have to be vulnerable. Again, it doesn't mean lying prostrate on the floor and saying, please abuse me, hurt me, call me names. No, we have to set those boundaries. But we have to first be open to new and potential ideas that aren't there. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we're more likely to connect with others. We connect on a deeper level when we are vulnerable. That builds stronger relationships. That builds support for us. It's also nicer. I mean, I would like to assume going to be around for a long time, and we might be coming back in different ways. Who the heck knows? I mean, I know our energy continues on, but at least while I'm here, I want to have real relationships, at least with those people that matter to me. Vulnerability is also the path by which we are able to accept that there is a larger force than ourselves. How can I accept that there is something larger if I keep myself closed and say, you can't come in. This is my world. This is what I get. And once I say, okay, well, let's see what's out there, suddenly ideas come to me that I was never aware of. Feelings I get to explore that I did not have previously. So as we get to the end of this, I came up with some ideas of ways to cultivate vulnerability. Because again, to my initial topic, it's great to tell people you can do it. Rah, 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 gold ring, and give me a C, give me a, I don't know, whatever, but give me these things. But let's talk about some ways to actually become more vulnerable. And so here are some tips for cultivating vulnerability. First, in no particular order, be honest with yourself. What's the old joke? When all else fails, try honesty. So be honest with yourself. The first step to being vulnerable with others is being honest with yourself about your feelings and your needs. What is it that I really feel? And that journey within can be frightening. Oh my God, this is what I really feel. Back to my comment about a divorce. I remember, and Vicki described my life when I was 39, chest pains and lack of finances, didn't know my kids really well. They were little kids. I was totally miserable. And I remember sitting up one night before I decided to get the divorce, watching NYPD Blue. I remember it very specifically. And I was sitting in the living room and I took a look at my life and I thought, oh my goodness, what's in common among all these? Oh my God, it's me. And I had to go through that pain, and I literally broke down and started crying. But I had to go through that in order to move forward and make it better. I had to be honest with who I was, pain and all. Next one, start small. Don't be vulnerable with everybody all at once. I mean, I think we call that TMI, too much information, overshares. Yeah, you can kind of hold that back a little, please. I don't need to know that much about you right now. But there are people in your lives with whom you feel safe. This community might be one of them. So to go ahead, start with people you trust and tell us something about them that is who you really are. Be brave. Practice mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of paying attention to the present moment without judgment. I like to use the expression, be where your feet are. Yeah, I'm as guilty of it as anybody. I might be physically here, but my mind is somewhere else. I'm thinking about everything else I got to get done or everything else that was done to me. And I'm not enjoying the present, which means I don't get a present. I'm spending my time in the past or the future, and the reality, back to the comment about it's all faith versus fear. Fear exists in the future. Rarely does it exist in the present. Fear is because I get spun out about something that might happen. So now I'm afraid of the future and I'm not enjoying the present and I'm complaining about the past. What kind of life is that? It's a life. It's not the one I necessarily want. Next thing is to connect with others. Spending time with people who are supportive and non-judgmental can help us feel safe and secure. People who share our you-knows. No, yeah, I know. Find other people who share your you-knows. Forgive yourself. Oh my goodness gracious. If you make a mistake, don't beat yourself up about it. If guilt and shame were motivational, we would all be more successful. We'd all be happier. It doesn't work. We're all doing the best we know how to do. That's the bottom line. So forgive yourself, forgive others. It takes strength to forgive. Be patient. It takes time to build trust and to be comfortable being vulnerable with others. It's not, I'm going to open the door and that will suddenly be me. Don't expect it to happen overnight. And remember, you're not alone. I've mentioned therapy enough times, so I'll say it again. But there's practitioners, dare I say it. But there's also therapists. There is no shame in seeking help. We have everything we need to be who we are, and sometimes those needs that those tools that we have available to us are through other people. To say we have everything we need doesn't mean it's all contained within us. Yes, it is, by realizing this is an area that I do not yet know how to handle. And so I will ask advice from others. So in conclusion, 4 points in conclusion for you. Vulnerability is a necessary part of any spiritual journey. When we're willing to be vulnerable, we open ourselves up to the possibility of being transformed by the divine. Vulnerability can be a sense of strength. When we're willing to face our fears and share our deepest pain, we find we are not alone. We find that we are connected to something larger than ourselves. Vulnerability can lead to greater intimacy. When we are vulnerable with others, we create a space where they can be vulnerable with us. This can lead to deeper relationships that are based on trust and love. And finally, vulnerability is a powerful tool for spiritual growth. When we are willing to be vulnerable, we open ourselves up to a deeper and more meaningful connection with ourselves, others, and something larger than ourselves. Vulnerability is the gift that allows us to connect to our greater self. So with that in mind, let's go into a treatment. What I know is that there is only one infinite source, one all-encompassing energy that is everything that ever has been and everything that ever will be, and that is in, around, through, and is me. And knowing that that source flows through me at all times and that there is no separation, I can call on it whenever I want to protect me, to guide me, to give me great ideas, and to allow me to be vulnerable and open to those ideas that come to me whenever I am willing to accept them. And for that, I accept the ideas that come to me. I know that my knowledge and my intelligence will determine what are the right ideas to manifest into this universe, knowing that there is no limit to what I can create as long as I am open to the possibility of what I am and what I can do. And for all of that, I am immensely grateful beyond words. And I release this knowledge into the law of mind, knowing it's been happening all along, and all I have to do is stand by and accept it. And again, I am grateful, and so it is.
Thank you so much, Scott Marcus. It was wonderful having you with us today. Thank you for each of you for your time, talents, and treasures that you share with the Louisville Center for Spiritual Living. We are absolutely so grateful. And if you would like to know more ways to contribute to the center, it is in the chat today, or you can find it on the website or in the weekly newsletter. For our April Prosperity Affirmation, with spring in my heart, every area of my life is in full bloom. So let's say that together. With spring in my heart, every area of my life is in full bloom. And knowing that we are absolutely blessed and abundantly expanding as a community, I pass this offering to Vicki Jeter.
And I simply receive the good that is flowing through to allow it to be multiplied in this symbolic basket, knowing that the law of circulation takes it and takes it out into the world, back in and through all of your lives. Thank you, thank you, thank you, God, that the law is the law that never misses, and love and law are one. Blessings be, and so it is. Now, for announcements today, I'm going to start very quickly, and then I'm going to pass it back to Katrina. And I'm starting because I want to describe just a little bit about our first Wednesday in May is coming up, and it just follows lovely from the month that we've had, and Scott's message is beautiful. On Wednesday, we're going to delve into vulnerability and self-love as a preview to the event that's coming on the 7th of May, and I'll have the slide on that in just a moment. After service on the 7th of May, we're going to have about 2 hours of discussion time with Dr. William Emerson and Suzanne Harrell. Suzanne Harrell, as you all will recall, wrote the book Seed Thoughts for Loving Yourself that we've taken some affirmations from. And William is my mentor in birth psychology. And the two of them are going to be available the afternoon of the 7th of May from 12:15 to 2. Everyone is welcome. There is no charge to attend this event. And you don't have to stay for the whole time. If you need to, you could leave. I so would love everyone that I know to have an opportunity to embrace this topic and get to know these two beautiful beings who helped me to apply everything I know in science of mind and put the fourth tire on the pavement and literally transform my life. So thank you for listening to me, and I will turn the word back to Katrina.
Our men's group will be on this Zoom link this Thursday. So please join us. Well, not me, but please join the men in our community for this Thursday. Next Sunday is awesome. Light Within the Shadows will be presented by our very own Miss Vicky. And I am so looking forward to the May theme, which is about light and darkness. Oh, fantastic. So we have a Google Calendar for our community. And if you go to our weekly updates that you receive, if you notice at the bottom here, there's a link that you can click to our community calendar. And it shows all of the different activities that this community does that you can tap into. So as you see here on Saturday morning, the 29th, which was yesterday, we met for an 11 o'clock discussion call. Today's service on the 30th. And it has everything that our community is doing so that you can tap in and join us for different events. Please stay for sharing time after the benediction. I'll also be available for private spiritual mind treatment to support you throughout your week. And to remember that you are magnificent. Our closing song for today is Holy Now by Peter Mayer.
When I was a boy each week, on Sunday we would go to church and pay attention to the priest. He would read the holy word and consecrate the holy bread, and everyone would kneel and bow. Today the only difference is everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. And when I was in Sunday school, we would learn about the time Moses split the sea in two, and Jesus made the water wine. And I remember feeling sad. Miracles don't happen still. Now I can't keep track, 'cause everything's a miracle. Everything's a miracle. Wine from water is not so small, but an even better magic trick is that anything is here at home. So challenging thing becomes not to look for miracles, but finding where there isn't one. When holy water was rare at best, it barely wet my face. second rate hand me down, but I walk it with a reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now. Testament, that'd be very hard to say. See another new morning come, say it's not a sacrament. I tell you that it can't be done. This morning outside I stood, I saw a little red-winged bird shining like a burning bush and singing like a scripture verse. It made me want to bow my head. I remember when church let out, how things have changed since then. Everything is holy now. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second rate hand me down, but I walk it with a reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now.
Now, in our lying down and in our rising up, in our rest and in our labor, in our tears and in our laughter, may we shine the light of Spirit's love on each other's path, now and forevermore. Amen.